I so appreciate the very good conversation that we have had here this morning. We've kept you a while. I'm just going to ask one, maybe two questions, and then we can wrap up. A great deal of discussion about the just the changes that we have seen in the energy sector, again, in this past decade, and all that that means to the regulatory agency that has this oversight for review. As we look to your role, one of the things that we keep coming back to here in this committee is it's wonderful to have the resource. We got a lot of resource in Alaska, whether it's oil or gas or coal or what have you. But if you can't move the resource to where the market is, where the demand is, it is just sitting there. And so the discussion about how we deal with this growing need for new pipeline infrastructure in this country, and a recognition that you have a lot of people that want to enjoy the benefits of what is coming down that pipe, but they really would rather not see it. They don't want to see it in their state, do it somewhere else. But I think we recognize when you're talking about resilience and reliability and affordability, safety, we've got to figure out how we facilitate greater pipeline infrastructure. And Chairman McIntyre, you mentioned the review that is underway. Can you just flesh it out a little bit more for me in terms of how you see the FERC moving forward with this very critical and very necessary review relating to our infrastructure? We have been talking for about a year and a half now about the possibility for a big infrastructure package. From the energy side of things, I think that we've got some pretty good ideas, some shovel-ready issues, if you will, as it relates to that pipeline infrastructure. But can you share with me FERC's role in how we work to meet the need that we clearly have, particularly in areas of very high need in the Northeast?
Yes, Madam Chair, I'm happy to do that. The actual statutory construct for this goes back to the 1930s, but our most recent, at the FERC, our most recent vehicle for setting out our internal policy for how we process and advance natural gas pipeline projects dates to 1999. And so it's time for us to take a fresh look at that, hence my announcement earlier this year that we would do precisely that. And I am, of course, but one of 5 voices on this commission, and my colleagues are very thoughtful regulators in their own right, and I anticipate the thoughtful input from each of them that I have come to expect. I will say for my own part, though, that I have no interest in initiating a review of our gas certificate policy area for the purpose of slowing anything down. My interest is in streamlining and making more efficient the processes that we have. So I agree with the suggestion of your statement that we need to be efficient in this area, and I, for my own part again, endeavor to do exactly that.
Well, and I appreciate what you have just added there at the end, that it's your intention that this review moves us towards a process that is more efficient, more prompt, more clear as it relates to issuing these FERC pipeline certificates. And I know the question, it was actually asked by Senator Gardner with regards to adequate staffing within FERC. And you indicated that you're looking to hire, and we understand that certainly from Alaska's perspective, we have a very significant proposal before the FERC. And when I say significant, it is massive in size, and you all know that because you've probably got boxes in your office as it relates to that. But it has been an issue of mine, and I continue to ask the question whether you believe the FERC is allocating the resources, really the staffing, the resources to whether it's the LNG exports that Senator Gardner asked about, or pipeline applications from states like Alaska. And it's one thing to say you're hiring, but are you satisfied with the resources that you have before the commission?
Senator, I'm never satisfied. We are continuing to explore creative new ways to make our processes more efficient and to enable ourselves to address this significant amount of work that lies before us. I completely agree with your acknowledgement of the importance of not only the Alaska project, but the many other projects that are pending. The Alaska one certainly is quite a massive one and has garnered a lot of attention within our staff and is a matter of ongoing work, as it should be.
One last question for you, and this is as it relates to hydropower. Commissioner Paulson, I appreciated that you mentioned that when we think about baseload, in addition to nuclear and coal, hydropower can also be that source of baseload, if you will, and a very critical part of our overall energy portfolio. Certainly significant for us in Alaska. About 25% of our energy comes from hydro, and we certainly see the benefit, clean, renewable. But when you think about the impact of hydro, it's kind of one of those ones that nobody really talks much about. But powering about 30 million homes, 100 gigawatts of the nation's energy, 200 million metric tons of carbon dioxide emissions that we see each year. So I'm a big proponent of hydro. And when we recognize what we have in front of us, about a third of the nation's existing hydropower projects will require license renewals by the year 2030, not too far off. And again, we've heard the testimony in this committee that when you're looking at a relicensing, not a licensing for a new dam, not a licensing for a new dam, but a relicensing, it can take over a decade, and costs can reach into the $50 million range. Senator Cantwell and I have worked on some improvements to the licensing process that add accountability, transparency, coordination amongst the agencies. But the question, and I'll throw it out to any of you there, is what we can do to ensure that unnecessary regulatory costs and delays don't result in the loss of existing hydropower projects. Because when you think about it, if you're looking at a decade or more to go through the processing, millions of dollars, folks get a little bit discouraged and they throw in the towel. We can't have that happening. So how do we work to make sure that there is an efficiency, that we are working to reduce costs, and really what FERC can do administratively to improve the licensing process? Because this is something that we're all going to be dealing with in the not-too-distant future here. I throw that out to whoever wants to jump in.
I'll kick it off and then invite my colleagues to chime in.
Thank you.
We have taken some steps intended toward being helpful reforms recently. Last year, for example, we extended the standard license term. We also are looking at processes to streamline the stakeholder input process so that too does not become something that slows down the hydro licensing process in and of itself. Okay. And we're actively considering additional measures that we can take in addition to ensuring that we have proper staffing to address these projects.
All right, because that's a piece of it as well.
I was going to mention the increasing the license term also, and I would say that the cycle of hydro relicensings is very well known, and the people in energy projects have been staffing up to be able to meet that cycle for some time. We've known for some time we're hitting this high. I would say one of the bigger issues that we face is, well, under the Federal Power Act, we're supposed to take into account not just electricity, but water use, fish, irrigation, environment, recreation, and there are a number of other agencies on whom we rely for orders, Fish and Wildlife, Army Corps, state water agencies, and so forth. I think the memorandum of understanding that Chairman McIntyre signed was intended to provide a discipline of the process, so the other agencies, even though we already have the right to set a timeline for them, we just can't enforce it, but there would be some more voluntary compliance and more keeping to the timelines, because that's frequently one of the biggest drivers of delays in the processes is the interdependency.
Senator, just to pick up on that, I'd also add, as you mentioned, with the swath of applicants fast approaching, I mean, you look at many of these assets, they've been, they're 1950 vintage, but the components inside are modernized from new Siemens to GE turbines. And my point there would be is kind of making sure that if we have these boxes checked at the state level from the environmental regulator to the Army Corps, that we could provide some type of conditional approval that might help alleviate some of these concerns. But I will pledge to you, I think we all will, to work with you and your colleagues to make sure that these projects are done in an efficient manner and approved in an efficient manner.
Madam Chair, I just wanted to add, and Commissioner LaFleur kind of hit on it, but one of the big problems, obviously, is the other resource agencies, and it's bureaucratic, it's difficult. But I know that the energy bill that you all worked on that passed the Senate in the last Congress had a number of provisions really designed to improve that coordination. So improve, for instance, have the ability of the resource agencies to participate in the FERC process, the FERC licensing processes up front, which actually gives them the type of education, and maybe they did go back to their agencies and maybe move a little more quickly on their part of the licensing.
Commissioner Chadwick?
I would just add, I did everything I could to get that bill signed into law.
Thank you. Yeah, we do recognize that we do have some very important provisions that were included in the energy bill that this committee moved out, and we want to get that across the line, because I do think that is an important piece of what it is that you do. Recognizing that you can't necessarily control these agencies, but there has to be a little bit better process, and we think that we outlined some of that, and we appreciate your assistance with that. So know that is something that we want to continue to work with you on. I think that this has been a very, very instructive and informative discussion here this morning, as you saw from the participation from both sides of the aisle, very keen interest in what is going on within the commission, and certainly the insight and guidance that you all provide. Clearly, a great deal of discussion yet to be had as you work through these important initiatives, and as we continue our role as the oversight committee here, working with an administration that also is weighing in on, again, a subject of great importance to folks around the country. So thank you for your leadership, and again, thank you for the significant time that you have provided the committee today. And with that, we stand adjourned.